Thank you for joining us for today's Food for Thought. Before we begin, I wanted to introduce myself and our fellow panelists. My name is Perry Mazurkowicz, and I work for SFC. Students for Canada is an advocacy program designed by students and young professionals for students and young professionals. We are a group of devoted individuals who believe that Canada can have a strong future in energy and the environment. Gina Pappano is an executive director from InvestNow, here to discuss the divestment movement and how students can encourage their post-secondary institutions to continue supporting Canadian natural resources. Finally, before I hand the floor over to Gina, please remember that questions can be asked in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. The meeting will be recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel, and parts may be used on our social media channels. So please support us and give us a follow at Students for Canada on any of our social media platforms. Thank you, Gina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Pappano. I'm Executive Director from InvestNow, as Perry just introduced me. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and a bit of my background, I graduated from Queen's University with a B.Commerce, and I started to work for an investment bank, and then I went on to work at the Toronto Stock Exchange and TSX Venture Exchange, where I spent the bulk of my career. I was head of market intelligence there. And when I left there, I was introduced to some people that were starting this not-for-profit organization called InvestNow, and I've become an executive director. And you'll learn more about InvestNow in my presentation, and let's get that started. So my presentation today is to speak about the divestment movement that's going on in universities, institutions, government organizations, banks, and companies in general. So what is fossil fuel divestment? It's the stated goal of the global divestment movement is for all of these groups that I just mentioned, companies, banks, institutions, and governments, to immediately and completely divest from fossil fuels in order to reduce emissions and combat climate change. So basically what that means is you sell or get rid of any stocks and other funds that you have where you're invested in publicly traded oil and gas companies. The global divestment movement was started by a US organization called 350.org and is now celebrating its 10-year anniversary. What is InvestNow? InvestNow launched a year ago to provide a counterpoint to the divestment movement. Our stated goal is to demonstrate that investing in Canada's resource sectors, which are oil and gas, mining, agriculture, and forestry, helps Canadians and the world. Investing in hydrocarbons ensures supplies come from countries with high governance standards. Investing in Canada's resource sectors means investing in innovation and carbon tech solutions. Canada's resource sectors and companies are lawful, highly regulated. They adhere to the highest environmental standards, and they provide huge social and economic benefits to all Canadians. So how does divestment work at universities? The divestment movement at universities is targeted to the president and the board of governors at a university. So there's a small group of people, it's usually about 20 to 25 people. They're called the board of governors, and they have the decision-making power to divest the university's endowment fund from fossil fuels. And what happens usually is 350.org sets up activist groups, and these groups write letters, they stage protests, they have sit-ins, and they're trying to aggressively influence the divestment decision. So far, 11 Canadian universities have committed to full or partial divestment, and the latest one being U of T, which is a $4 billion endowment fund, which was quite large. And the reason given is that they're trying to combat climate change. And I'll show you later on that divestment does not combat climate change. So our goal is to get the president and the board of governors of the universities to hear the other side of the argument. They're not hearing that side right now. And we want to impress upon them that divestment is an empty political statement and has no discernible effects on carbon emissions. So after a decade of the global divestment movement, 1,500 institutions around the world have publicly committed to divest from fossil fuels, and that represents $39 trillion of assets under management. So it's a lot of money coming out of fossil fuels. But also after a decade of the global divestment movement, global demand for oil and gas has gone up. Global emissions have gone up. Hydrocarbons still make up 80% of our global energy mix. Wind and solar and other renewable energy sources are still not ready for prime time. Like, you can't just flip a switch and have it be all renewable. That's not going to be possible, and it won't be possible for quite a long time. And there has been a chronic underinvestment in the Canadian oil and gas sector. Oil and gas provides Canadians and the world with affordable, reliable energy. Oil and gas companies are leading investors in carbon emissions reduction technologies and innovation. So they're the biggest investors in clean tech. They're even more than the government is. There are countless products that rely on oil and gas. I want to show you a commercial that I found put out by a company called Energy Transfer, and it just sends a message that we rely on a daily basis. We rely on things that involve oil and gas, like that have oil and gas in them, that are have petrochemicals, our electricity, almost everything that we deal with on a daily basis involves oil and gas. And virtually every company that's listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange is fueled by the oil and gas sector. Like, you can't have mining without oil and gas to power the machines. You can't have steel, you can't have buildings, you can't have agriculture, like fertilizer. Everything depends on oil and gas. And that's a message that I don't think comes across on an everyday basis, that if you look around the room, plastics, your computer, your screen, vinyl, what you're wearing, your Canada Goose jacket, everything involves oil and gas in some way, shape, or form.
That connection was brought to you by petroleum products. But what if we lived in a world without oil and natural gas? Life would be very different, because oil and gas are part of just about everything you touch. From the stuff in your hair to the stuff you wear. And so much more. Our world would be unrecognizable if the products we rely on just disappeared. Better luck next time.
Okay, so our message is simple at InvestNow. It's don't divest, invest now. Divesting from fossil fuels does not reduce global emissions. It does not reduce demand. It does not foster innovation. Investing in Canadian hydrocarbons fosters innovation and carbon tech solutions. It ensures oil and gas supply comes from countries with high governance and environmental standards. It means investing in the industry that fuels every other industry on our stock exchanges. And it means investment in the most productive sector in Canada. What can be your action plan? Contact or start a local SFC chapter at your university, and also go on to investnow.org and pass our resolution to stop divestment and invest now. Thank you. Well, the first thing to do is not to attack them, but just to state the facts, really. So, as we stated in the presentation, divestment doesn't reduce demand. So really all these organizations that are saying, oh, we're not investing in oil and gas, it doesn't change things. It doesn't change the emissions. It doesn't affect demand. The fact is, the world is going to need oil and gas for a long time. It's the cheapest, the most reliable energy around. So many countries are still in poverty. They don't even have any electricity or means of cooking, anything like natural gas. And to bring them out of poverty, it's the cheapest and the most reliable way is to have our oil and gas sector be robust and to get out there to these other countries. So I guess the main thing is that the other side's position is not working. What they're saying divest and that'll help climate change, but that's not in fact true. And also being Canadian, we rely on our natural resources sectors. We're so rich in natural resources that why would we want to eliminate an industry that provides us with so many social and economic benefits, so much revenue to the government through taxes, so many social programs come out of the revenues that oil and gas provides, and jobs, not to mention very high paying jobs. These are all important things to our economy. And to suggest that we won't have that anymore is really to suggest like we should be committing, economic suicide, really. We need to foster this. And also because we have such a strong background in natural resources, the innovation is going to come in these industries. They will innovate to pull oil and gas out of the ground in a more efficient manner, or have less emissions. And also that'll take place in the mining sector too. Like these companies will innovate, and in my mind, it'll be the people in these companies that will be the most innovative and solution providers. They'll be solution providers. If you're taking their argument to say, they should divest from all fossil fuel companies, well then, if they turn around and invest that money in Air Canada, or they turn around and invest that money in, a big construction company like Stantec, those companies rely on oil and gas to run. Like they wouldn't be able to run any manufacturing company in Ontario or Quebec. Those companies require energy. They require machinery. They require fuel. And so there's a bit of hypocrisy there, because they're saying divest from these companies, but every other company relies on oil and gas to run and to be a profitable company. So the idea is take that money and put it into clean technology and renewable energy companies. I'm not sure if that's actually happening.
And then I have another question, like just based on that kind of idea. So if universities are then divesting, what does that do for the cost to students? Like, would we see tuition go up as universities are potentially making or trading less money?
Yeah, you could. Well, they may not. That's kind of hard to judge, because we don't know what they were invested in or how much money they had in those stocks. I'm actually waiting for a university to do a study on that, because it would be interesting to know how much money they could have made, because there are a lot of studies that came out when oil and gas was not doing well. A lot of studies came out and said, oh yeah, you should divest, because look at you could have saved the fund billions of dollars if you had done so. But now I think it's time that we could say, oh, wait a second, you should not have divested, because you lost the fund all this much money. And so I think that's a worthwhile study to undertake. And I think we would find the results very, very telling and very similar to the other side, what the other side did, but for our side now. When you're a shareholder, and when you're a big shareholder, as these institutions are big shareholders of certain companies, you have more of a say at the table. So you have a voice at the table. If you're not invested in these companies, you don't have a voice at the table. So as a large shareholder, you could say, oh, we need to invest more in technology. This company should be investing more in technology, or this company should be doing it. So you should be more concerned with the emission reductions. So having a large position in a company allows you to have a voice at the table. And if you don't have that, then you don't have the voice at the table. And then you just don't have a say in anything that the company does.
So I've read a bit on the 350.org, their mission, their statements. And one of them was that the fossil fuel industry itself ignores present and future social and environmental costs. I just wanted to know what you think about that statement and if through your experience it's true or not.
Well, I don't think they could say that because we don't know where the next innovation is going to come from. Carbon capture has been a big innovation that came from the oil and gas industry. To close the door to a whole industry, to shut out a whole industry, to say we're not investing in you, whereas where the solutions could come from that industry, and they probably will come from that industry because nobody knows the oil and gas industry better than people that are working in oil and gas. So if there's going to be innovations, it'll be happening there, and it should be at the universities too. Funding research projects. So where will this lead? Will they not accept money from oil and gas companies to fund research projects that will lead to innovation? I'm not sure. That technically that's what they should be doing, but I don't know that the universities are going to take it that far. It's very easy to say we're not investing in the funds, but I don't think they're going to not accept donations from people in the oil and gas sector and also some research project funding from the oil and gas sector.
And I think we see so many bright minds at SFC too who are capable of providing real solutions, and it's just unfortunate that their universities don't want to kind of support them through it.
Yes. If the oil and gas that the world needs and demands doesn't come from Canada, it will come from other countries. The supply will be met somewhere, and it should come from Canada because Canada has the highest governance and environmental standards in the world. And so divesting does not do anything to demand, and the supply will still be coming from somewhere, and we want it to come from Canada. And that's it.
Agreed, for sure. And that's SFC's core mandate. So you put it very, very well.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time today, Gina. We so appreciate your expertise. I know a lot of our students are looking at their own divestment movement and their own university. So I will certainly be sending people toward investnow.org, where you can learn more about university movements and how to, combat the divestment movement and add your voice to the mix, for sure. Because I think we have a lot of people who are very, excited about this. So thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one thing for your own information. I just did a little study on Queen's University. And so what I've found is that if the Board of Governors doesn't hear the other side, they're going to vote for divestment because I don't think they realize all of the points that we've just brought up today in our presentation. So at Queen's University, when they were being approached by the divestment movement, the principal at the time set up a committee, and he asked for feedback from all people, so professors, staff, faculty, students, alumni, big donors, to say, do you think Queen's should divest from? So he put it out there to everyone, not just the committee that was struck. They got the feedback from everyone, and they chose not to divest. It's an encouraging example because when people have a voice and when the other side is heard, it could change the minds of the decision makers. So that's really our mission, is to get out there and to try and convince people to think twice about it, even if they think twice about it, instead of just wholesale divestment and to realize what they're doing. I don't think people realize what it all means.